I'm a 19-year-old male currently about to finish my first year at Rice University. Until just recently, my father served in the United States Army. Our family had to move around a lot as a result, and when I reached my teens, my mother got tired of shuffling from base to base, and we set down roots for the first time. My dad was deployed for much of this time, and I only saw him here and there. Mom and I found a small 2-bedroom house in Virginia and got a little mutt from the pound. I was finally able to live like a regular kid and make friends whose parents weren't soldiers. Our neighbors were very friendly and often had neighborhood cookouts on summer holidays, and I kissed my first girl at a July 4th party and met my best friend on my first day of school. It was the life I'd always dreamt of, and although it was a relatively short time, I enjoyed every minute. Despite all of the things my mother had done wrong in my life, that one decision makes up for almost all of it. I bring up my rocky relationship with my mother only to lead into the point of this post. We had been living in the house a year when I noticed a man and a young boy had began walking by every day. This went on for over a month before I brought it up to my mother. I was honestly just curious if she knew anything about the pair. Rather than say no, she gave me a lengthy speech about minding my own business. I kept my mouth shut after that. Even when we'd see the two around town, I wouldn't say anything. My mom tried bringing them up once, but when I failed to take the bait, she never mentioned them again either. Usually whenever we saw them, they were standing around the same busy intersection, seemingly begging for money. The man held up a sign that said, "Disabled vet, can't work, me and son need your help, any donations accepted." The man would stand by a signal pole while the boy went from car to car with a coffee can. I felt bad at first, but I soon discovered the truth. It was a wet fall evening when my mom and I were leaving Walmart. The lot was so full when we arrived, and we had to park around the back of the store. I was helping load bags into the back seat when I noticed the man and boy run up to an almost new Dodge truck and get inside. I did a double take just to make sure. It seemed strange that they were begging for change, but driving a nicer car than my family had. I realized that there may have been circumstances that I wasn't aware of, and boy were there. But something about it rubbed me wrong. As time went by, I'd see the pair around town, but only saw that truck twice. The second time was where the story began to get scary. This occurred a few months later while my mom was working overnight. Like always, she told me to stay home and not open the door for anyone. And like most teenagers, I ignored her and did what I wanted. On this night, I was skating with a few friends at a drive-through bank. It was around midnight when a familiar truck pulled up nearby. The man asked if we wanted to go to a party. It was supposedly the boy's birthday, and he wanted some kids his age to celebrate with. Everyone declined the offer, even after he'd mentioned that there would be party favors available. They offered once more before driving off, and everything about the situation seemed strange, and I must not have been the only one who felt it. Only later would I discover how wise our choice had been. 2019 soon became 2020, and with the new year, as you remember, some crazy stuff happened. I'd continue to see the two guys walking down my street and begging at the intersection until one day they just sort of disappeared. I took note of it but figured that they had moved on just as my family had done so many other times. It was a lifestyle and I was very familiar with it. Lockdown would soon come and my focus would shift on to other things. My dad would soon come home for a while and I'd spend all my time with him. It wasn't until well after the lockdowns had ended that the two strangers came back to my attention. I was browsing through Twitter when I saw a picture of a man connected to a headline. I clicked on the link and got the shock of my life. According to the article, the young man, name withheld because he was a minor, had showed up at our local police station and shared an amazing story. At first, the officers didn't believe him, but after a bit of research, they were eager to hear more. A few years prior to their arrival to our town, the adult male, I'm not sharing his name, that scumbag deserves to be forgotten, had abducted the young man from a bus station in St. Louis. Over the course of several months, the man abused the boy until he grew tired of him, and rather than dispose of him, he began to use the boy to lure other young men into his trap. The pair would travel from city to city, begging during the day and trolling for prey at night. The boy estimated that the man had violated roughly 25 to 30 other boys during his time traveling with him. He was adamant that he never took part in any of the actual acts. His purpose was solely to bait the young men to the truck. And although many of the young men were released alive, the boy said that he was almost positive a few were not so lucky. In one case, he said that the old man had blood on his clothes after dumping one young man off alongside the highway, and when he asked about the blood, the old man grew aggressive, so he didn't press the matter. However, without witnessing any of this firsthand, he couldn't provide any names or locations, and this dark way of life carried on until mid-2020 when the old man had actually contracted COVID and died. With nowhere to go, the boy figured that he'd just tell his story in hopes that someone may help him find his family. At the time of the story it was written, the investigation was still in its early phases, and I'm not sure how much more had been discovered since. If I find out anything more during the summer break, I'll post an update. The article put me in a state of shock for many days after I read it. I had been suspicious of the two from the get-go, but realizing how close I had been to being assaulted and possibly dead was just too much to handle. I briefly thought about sharing the story with my mom, but quickly changed my mind. Considering her behavior from the outset and that I had gone out against her wishes, it didn't seem smart. And as far as I'm aware, she still doesn't know anything about it. It wouldn't be out of the ordinary for her to miss something so major. She's always been very focused on herself at the cost of everyone around her. And really, that's all I know for now. There was no information about what became of the boy, and he'd probably be an adult by now. And for all I know, he could be a fellow student at my school, or maybe even yours. There's also the chance that he took up his companion's habits, too. They say most of those who abuse were abused themselves. Somewhere tonight there may be a young man stalking the streets looking for his next victim. And if anyone reading this has a young teen son, it might be a good idea to share this story with them. It could save his innocence and, more importantly, maybe his life. If you enjoyed this scary story, listen to thousands more, either over on the Let's Read YouTube channel or podcast.